Welcome to Space Beat, powered by the USA Today Florida Network. Astronomers have detected a baby black hole that got a cosmic kick out of its host galaxy. After 30 years of discovery, scientists have logged their 6,000th exoplanet and say there are still billions, yeah, that's billions with a B, to be found. But first, there's a new strategy for dealing with an asteroid that could potentially hit the moon. Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Landers, your host, and these are some of the stories I'll be talking about this week with USA Today trending space reporter Eric Lagatta. Eric, welcome back to Space Beat.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for having me.
I just read your latest story about the proposals to send nukes to an asteroid that has the potential to hit the moon. What's going on?
Yeah, you're not wrong there. That is definitely that's a team of researchers that included some NASA scientists co-authored a paper that should be noted has yet to be peer reviewed that put forth a few possible plans to deal with asteroid 2024 YR4 when it comes into our cosmic neighborhood in 2032. And so among the plans that they suggested was kind of an extreme idea of just launching some nuclear devices at the asteroid and blowing it up.
If it's heading towards the moon, why are we worried about it? Like, what are the potential problems that we would face if it actually hit the moon?
So just as a reminder, so this is the asteroid that caused a few um, headlines in earlier this year, or this is the asteroid that caused some consternation earlier this year because when it was first discovered, it posed a significantly high risk of crashing into Earth. Now, astronomers were able to kind of rule that out as a possibility by after they gathered more data and observed it further. But on the other hand, they also noticed it has a growing risk of actually crashing into the moon in 2032 instead. NASA said that the asteroid's not big enough that the impact would alter the moon's trajectory or anything like that. But the authors of this paper have expressed concern that an impact of that magnitude would kick up some lunar debris that could pose a risk to satellites in Earth's orbit, or even to the International Space Station and the astronauts who are on board there. So that's why it's something that they're astronomers are keeping an eye on it, and the authors of this paper thought we might want to start talking about some ways that maybe we might want to deal with this asteroid if it does continue to pose a threat to the moon.
It kind of feels like we're like life is imitating art a little bit, and going into the movie Deep Impact. And I mean that we, in the movie they send nukes to blow up this asteroid, and instead what they do is they create two different asteroids that both hit the Earth, or one of them hits the Earth and the other one just kind of skips off. But what are the people behind this paper saying if it fails, or if it alters the asteroid's trajectory and makes it actually come directly towards Earth rather than towards the moon, or misses altogether?
Yeah, or I even thought that this sounds a lot too like Armageddon, the 1998 movie with Bruce Willis as well. But yeah, so that's something that I think they considered with some of the other possibilities they put forth. So, another idea is, that they had is you could potentially send a spacecraft on a collision course with this asteroid with the goal of not nudging it off its current trajectory. And that's not too far fetched. That's something that NASA was able to test in 2022 with its DART mission. So it's feasible for sure. But the issue there, like you kind of said, is that there's the potential that you could inadvertently knock it back onto a collision course with Earth instead of the moon, which is obviously not something you'd want to do. And so I think that's why when they talk about like using nuclear devices, that's something that it's like you don't really have to have a lot of good data on the asteroid size or weight, because if you're just going to launch a bunch of nukes at it, it's going to destroy it whatever the size is. So I think there's less of a concern that there would be anything left at that point to pose a threat.
Well, and that kind of brings me to my next point. Like, what are we talking here? Like one warhead, multiple warheads? Like, how big of a blast are we proposing to send up to this thing?
That's a good question, and I did see some news coverage out there that suggested that it could be, something that would be stronger than what the U.S. dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in 1945, potentially. But I think that would remain to be seen.
Okay, and then on Earth, of course, when it comes to nuclear weapons, the blast is significant, the shock wave, and then the heat wave, and then the radiation and the fallout. But that's not really a concern for us. One, because it's so far out, but space is filled with radiation already, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point too. I don't think that there would be any concern that there would be any kind of um, threat to us here on Earth, both due to the distance that it would be from us, and because, like you said, space is already a dangerous place for humans. So
Right. Okay. So, what kind of timeline are we looking at here? Because I think I read in your story that they'd have to get this built and launched within the next 4 years to actually get to the asteroid.
yeah, I think that the window they put forth was that this would have to happen between 2029 and 2031, I believe.
Okay. Well, since you mentioned Armageddon earlier, I really hope that if they actually do launch this and there is a viewing site like there is at KSC, that at least I don't want to miss a thing is playing in the background at the visitor center to give me that Armageddon tie-in. Moving on to another story that you had recently. You discussed the scientific findings regarding a baby black hole. It sounds like a baby bird, the way that it was kicked out of its nest, because scientists are now theorizing that this black hole was kicked out of its host galaxy. Explain.
Yeah, so this would be in reference to a black hole merger, and this is something that scientists first observed in 2019 with a gravitational wave detector here in the U.S. But yeah, recently they were able to get some more data on this event, this merger, and really merger is a very understated way to describe what happened. So essentially what happened is two large black holes um, collided into each other and merged, and basically sent a ripple of gravitational waves in all directions, and in that process kind of kicked away a baby black hole, or birthed a new black hole through that process. And so researchers were able to get a better idea of that event recently, even though this was first observed about 6 years ago.
Basically, the collision is like dropping a stone in water, and the ripples that would have come off of that stone dropping into the water, those are the same kind of waves that the scientists measured on this collision.
Yeah, that would be a good way of looking at it. Gravitational waves are certainly like kind of like cosmic ripples, and this was something that was first theorized by Albert Einstein, however many decades ago, and it's only been recently, I think, in the last few years that I think 10 years ago that the first gravitational wave was actually detected. So yeah, that would be a good way to describe that.
You said in the story that they were able to track the speed, which I think you said 31 miles per second. Uh, but that you also said they were able to track the direction. Any concerns to us here in the Milky Way?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think that was anything that they were concerned about. I think it was just more the curiosity factor of, getting a better idea of this kind of event.
Okay, well, speaking of discoveries, this month astronomers logged the 6,000th exoplanet discovered. That's 6,000 worlds that have been discovered outside of our own solar system, and they say there are still billions yet to be found. That is quite an achievement.
Yeah, it's really amazing to think about, especially when you think about the fact that our own solar system, Earth is just one of 8 planets, or nine if you really want to count Pluto. So when you consider that, that is a lot of planets that are out there, just waiting to be discovered. And so, yeah, very big achievement. It took 30 years to do it, but they've only gotten better and better at it as time has gone on. And so the next 30 years will probably discover plenty more than 6,000 more exoplanets.
So one of my favorite lines from the movie Contact is at the end when Jodie Foster is talking to a group of elementary school kids, and they're talking about life on other planets. And Jody, the character says, the universe is a pretty big place. So if it's just us, seems like an awful waste of space. So we haven't discovered life anywhere else outside of Earth yet. Um, what have we found?
Yeah, so that is really the big question, and I think that's what's driving a lot of this exploration for to find exoplanets out there is finding an Earth-like planet that could potentially sustain life. And I definitely think that is the goal eventually is to find that planet if it's out there. There's a lot of intriguing worlds that scientists have found, these exoplanets. Most of them, though, are pretty have a pretty extreme environments that would be inhospitable to life. But there are some, that have gotten close, and one of which would be K2-18b, which was a exoplanet that made some headlines here recently. When a team of scientists thought that maybe they found a biosignature there. Now, follow-up observations from other scientists have kind of been more, skeptical of that claim. So the search goes on. But yeah, of course, the idea would be to find some sort of rocky planet like Earth that can have, that where water could exist and life could flourish.
One of the big selling factors on the James Webb Telescope was that it had a way of blocking out a star's light so it could see other objects that might be circling that star. How big of a payoff have we gotten from James Webb in regard to finding exoplanets like this?
Oh yeah, I think James Webb Space Telescope has proved invaluable in searching for and observing exoplanets for sure. I know that pretty much anytime I write about anything exoplanet related, almost every time it's like the Webb Telescope was involved in some sort of fashion. And so obviously that's something that scientists around the world can apply to analyze or use Webb's data for findings. And so astronomers around the world are really benefiting from the data and observations that Webb has been able to return since I believe 2021.
Well, Eric, thank you for chiming in again this week. As always, thank you so much for everything you and your fellow space team reporters, Rick Neal and Brooke Edwards, do to keep us informed of launches across the nation and all kinds of fun space facts. That's going to do it for this episode of Space Beat. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you never miss one of our space videos. We'll see you again next time.